Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bowhunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands. Searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting.
Howdy team, and happy Easter. Hoping you're getting out for a hunt. I hope that your arrows are flying straight, and hopefully you're hearing plenty of croaks, roars, and just getting amongst the wild in general. Pretty stoked to bring this one to you. We are postpartum 6 weeks tomorrow from having our little daughter. So things have been a little busy in different ways for me. And so, yeah, pretty much I haven't had the chance to be able to apply any of my time to Bowhunter, to becoming a Bowhunter at all. But I do have a fair few podcasts I'd like to do. We'll just see what happens in the coming weeks. I'm not going to make any promises. But today, pretty excited to drop this one for you guys. It's with Matt White, and we talk all about, mostly about fallow. But there is a fair bit of conversation that happens about the reds. There's a fair bit of conversation that happens about sambar hunts as well. So good little bit of insight, and hopefully get you fired up for the rest of the rut. If you've not made it out yet, then I hope that you do get to go out soon. If you did make it out, I really hope that you got the animals down, the dream animals that you were chasing. I've definitely seen some pretty darn cool content and pretty amazing pictures and videos. So really stoked for everyone that is getting out and making it happen. If you fall into that category, well done. So yeah, sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy this one.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Bowhunter. Happy to be sitting here again with Matt White. Welcome back to the show, mate.
Hey, mate, how are you?
Yeah, good, dude. So we actually planned to do this a few weeks ago, but life happens. When you got a new kid and you're trying to get some shit happening for work, it just sometimes things get pushed back, and this is probably the first thing that usually gets pushed back on my end. So sorry for that, but at the same time, I'm glad that we finally got to make it happen.
No, that's all right, mate. Yeah, it would have been cool to put one out pre-rut, but I don't think I'd have the same stories to tell, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's been kind of cool just to see it unfold over the last few weeks for you. And something I think I really liked about what you were doing this year was taking some newbies out to help them out. And I think that's really cool. Actually, I got to go out for a day with some friends a few weeks ago. Well, actually, it was last Friday, so Friday the 8th of April. So it was kind of right in the midst of the rut, and it was a super cool day. The deer were roaring like crazy, but the winds were just absolutely shocking for us. And where we went, the guys didn't really know the block that well, so we were kind of finding our feet while we were there as well, which meant for just pretty much running around all day, chasing deer, chasing roars. And when we finally got to them all, they were all on the neighbouring blocks. And the lay of the land, we were actually, like, as the crow flies, really close to the deer, like 100 metres or so. But between us and them was probably 600 to maybe even up to a K away because of the depth of the valleys that were between us. So it made it really hard. And fuck, I'm no good at shooting 100 metres, so...
Yeah, it makes it pretty tough when you're on a new block too, because you kind of find yourself almost like chasing those deer around, like you're going to actually run them down and crash tackle them instead of actually hunt them. So
parachute on top of them, maybe this one.
Yeah,
yeah. But give us a little rundown. What did you kind of do differently this year with taking the newbies out? Like, what was your approach, and how new to bow hunting were they?
One guy, he's actually shot like a few animals with the rifle and all that sort of stuff, mainly a sambar hunter, but he was super, super keen to get out there and try it on with a bow. And we first met, actually, like we'd talked on Instagram for a long time, and then we first met, he took me out to show me the ropes on fly fishing. So
good.
Did that, got my first trout, and then came around to the rut, and I was like, I'll teach you everything I can. Like, unfortunately, I don't have the access anymore where I can get people on.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I've got a block if you want to come out. So, I was pretty stoked about that. So I was like, yeah, no worries. And he only had one day to do it as well. Like, obviously, as you know, like, life's very busy, especially when you got kids and all the rest of it. So, we went out to his block, and I put in a couple of calls and just little doe calls and stuff. And within probably the first
just to confirm, you're chasing fallow.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Sorry.
No,
so I put in a couple of doe calls for this young fellow that was off in the distance, and within the first hour I had one right on him at about 6 meters. So, he was completely stoked. He'd never seen anything like it. So, after that we spent the next probably 3 to 4 hours, like, pushing pretty hard. Actually, we did about 27 kilometers of that day, but ended up getting 3 deer to come in for him. So it was a pretty good day.
Did he shoot any of them?
No, he didn't shoot any of those. They were a little bit young. But 2 days later, I get this phone call, and he's just absolutely fucking over the moon. He's like, mate, those calls. He goes, there's something else. And, he sent me a photo, and he shot like a pretty decent 3 to 4 year old animal. So for his first one with a bow, like, you couldn't get it any better, really.
Yeah, it's incredible. That's amazing. And it's interesting. I actually kind of went in with the game plan this year. I'm really glad that I talked it out before I did, because I was thinking, you know what, chasing the reds, I've got one day with 2 mates. We're going to be up on the hill. Previously, I've done a lot of hind calling for them, and they've kind of run straight into it. And I thought, what's better than 1 hind? 3 hinds. I hit up Kev Shilf and said, mate, what do you think about if I was just to get the 3 boys and we'll just walk through the bush pretty much calling, just going crazy like they kind of do with the elk? And he said, that's the worst idea. Like, do not do that. You'll shut all the boys up. They will not be into it at all. Excessive calling is not good for them. What do you kind of find with the fallow?
Oh, it's exactly the same. I think people have this persona where they think calling's like the bee's knees, but in all honesty, it works for a very short period of time, and it's usually like right before the rut starts. Mm-hmm. Especially with the younger guys, like they get a bit keen. But I think people do call way too much, especially once it comes to the rut. Like, it's a perfect opportunity. They're distracted. They're running around. They're smashing up their scrapes or hitting a tree. They're croaking or roaring or whatever. Like, it's a perfect opportunity just to slip in there and get the perfect store. Mm-hmm. So they're not really looking for people. They're looking for girls.
So with them looking for girls, you would think that doing girl calls would be the way to get them in closer. But you're saying, look, just find them, locate them based on their sounds pretty much, and try to sneak in instead while they're distracted. Yeah,
so from like early April, the doe call definitely brings in like a lot of animals. Mm-hmm. It definitely will, especially if you got the numbers there. But once the rut starts, it's more of a locating call. It's the same way the guys do it for the reds up north. Like Shilfy knows, obviously, you give out a roar, and they'll give themselves away. They'll roar back, obviously. Yeah. With the fallow, you give out a couple of doe calls, and they're going to start croaking just to be like, "Hey, I'm over here. Come this way. Come find me." You know, like they're not really going to move off the 6 or 7 girls that they got there to go and find one.
Yeah.
So. But it gives you the opportunity to go, right, he's about 300 metres this way, and then off you go. So
the girls are just as much in it as the boys are? Like, obviously they're going to estrus, so they're on heat, essentially. When they let out a call, and they will typically run towards the boys, is that the case?
They will, and actually what I find peak rut is when I do doe calls, I actually call in more does than I do bucks.
There you go.
Yeah, so they will actually talk back to you.
The does? or just the
Yeah,
bucks? Yeah.
yeah. So I did this on the weekend with the other guy, Mike. We went out. We're on top of a hill, and I just heard this off in the distance, and I was like, righto. And then I started calling back, and I actually called a couple of does up to him at about, I don't know, they got to about 30 yards and then took off. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, you definitely get a lot more girls coming in during peak rut more than the guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, go on.
No, go.
So when it comes then, like, at what point do you stop doing calls then for the guy? Like, do you stop doing hind calls or doe calls?
Once I've found them, like once I find the deer, and like
I was going to say before you were talking about like as soon as the ruts kind of started that they won't really respond to it as such.
Oh right, yeah. So like as in like date wise,
yeah.
Yeah, you sort of notice that they tend to ignore you a little bit or start croaking once one girl's come into estrus. So you're looking at any time between like the 6th and 9th of April.
Mm-hmm.
Once that happens, and they're just going to ignore you basically.
So what about when you hear like the lone stag that's still roaring at the end of April into May? Is it worthwhile trying to do calls at all at something like that that's still kind of up and vocal, or not at all?
Yeah, I would. Like it's always worth a shot because you never know if it is actually going to run in at you or just, slither its way in closer towards you or try and circle around you and figure out what you are. Like there's always that off chance that the deer will come in. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Sorry, that's a beer. But yeah, like I wouldn't give it away completely. Like I'd definitely still go out there and call 100%. Okay. Yeah.
And then, do you ever refer to rattling? Do you ever go to that as a preference at all?
I do, but I want to be really, really close in on like their main sort of scrape area, which you'll know, like a main scrape's going to be, sometimes 2 to 3 meters wide or long. So when you're in that sort of area and you know that they're probably within 150, 200 meters, then it is worth giving a rattle to see if you can pull them in if they're not in a stalkable position. Like for me, like calling's either like a locating thing or a very last resort if I don't think that I can get it done any other way. So,
and so your game plan is pretty much locate the boys, see that they're distracted by the girls, and get as close as possible and get the job done.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game plan. It doesn't always come off that way, but
no, definitely, because obviously you've got a lot of eyes there. Are the girls as distracted as the boys in this point in time?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So you'll actually see them like they almost like tease the bucks occasionally. Like they'll come through to where he's standing on his scrape, and then they'll take off running.
Yeah,
and then he'll go and chase them away. So like chase them to try and hop on. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like there was actually on the weekend we were coming down on top of a couple of croaks after seeing a buck, watching him on his scrape for, I don't know, 20 or so minutes while Mike put in a pretty good stalk in on that animal before he took off. And then we went down the hill because we could hear some more croaking down there. And when we got in there, we were actually like, I've never seen anything like it. Like it's something like you would find in Europe, like a lek.
Yeah.
There would have been 50 plus scrapes in there, at least 7 or 8 bucks over the age of, say, 2.5 or 3 years old. Like all good shooters for a first-time bow hunter, 100%. And some proper ones in there and just does and spikers everywhere as well. And we actually found, like I was actually busted numerous times where some of them would actually just stand there or just go 100 meters away and then come back and then join back into this giant mess that was happening in there and not actually bark or spook at all. It was pretty incredible, but also the place doesn't get hunted, so I'm not sure if that played a part in it either. So
yeah, it's super interesting. Similar sort of circumstance to where we were last Friday. It was pretty much like one ridge, and I reckon the ridge kind of it's got its little gullies and stuff in between, but the reds we counted definitely five guys, but we could hear a few more off to the side. So there was potentially, I don't know, seven to eight reds just hanging out on this ridge that would have been no more than maybe, I don't know, maybe 600 meters long or thereabouts. Like it wasn't that big a space that they were all hanging out in. And
yeah, that would have been awesome.
the worst thing was that because they were all there, and I'm pretty certain that most of them had girls at least around them, or the satellite bulls were kind of looking over the top of them, satellite stags looking over the top of them. It meant that they just had no means to move away from where they were. They just wanted to call at each other and be like, "Oi, piss off, I'm here," and that was kind of it. Like we tried to intimidate one by getting as close as possible down the creek and just absolutely like roaring our guts off at him. He didn't budge. He was like, "Nah, stuff for you guys."
Yeah, usually that'll send them packing. Like if you're in close range and you start roaring at a rev, usually they'll just disappear.
Yeah, okay. Because he had two hinds with him.
They're nowhere near as aggressive. That's what I found anyway, especially when I was up in Queensland with Shilfie. Like, you'd roar at something and it would just go dead quiet.
Yeah.
Like, dead quiet.
If you're too close. Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. And so, talk us out how it kind of played out with Mike a little bit more. What was his situation?
Yeah, so, like, day one, we only had 2 days to hunt. So day one, we actually got out of the car. Literally, we're just like, gas bagging as we were walking off and getting all our kit like tightened up and whatever. And he's like, "Oh, there's some deer down here." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sweet." And here there was 2 younger bucks, probably about 2.5 plus as well, just in this like little gully, probably at about 70 or 80 yards. And they're down there just belting the absolute piss out of these trees. And I'm like, awesome. Like, get in there, dude. Like, go for it. Like, he couldn't get this any fucking better. So he's got down there and poor guy, he's done really well on this stalk. He's put in what looked like an awesome shot too. And I just heard this massive bang, like a gunshot went off, and I was like, that is 100% bone.
Yeah. And
tried to review it on the GoPro and everything like that, but as you know, like GoPro footage isn't exactly the best to zoom in on. But yeah, the poor guy only had about 2 inches of penetration on his arrow, and it just like snapped the broadhead off it.
What do you reckon it hit?
So I was like, sorry?
What bone do you reckon it hit?
Like either he's hit it like square on a rib or possibly hit the shoulder. I'm not real sure, but it had meat in the shaft of the arrow. So
surely if it hit a rib bone, that would snap through that.
Yeah, you would definitely think so. Yeah, especially because I think he's actually shooting more poundage than me too. I think he's like shooting nearly 80 pounds.
Yeah, so that would have to be elbow or something, right? Like for it to not penetrate.
I was completely baffled, but like on the GoPro, obviously it's hard to tell where an arrow actually hits.
Definitely,
especially when it's got a lighted knock and all that sort of jazz. Like it might be it actually looked further back than the shoulder. So
it's super interesting.
Yeah, it was super confusing, but like that deer is going to be completely fine. Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, so we continued on, and
was he gutted? How was he about it all?
Oh, like, yeah, you could tell that he was a little bit devastated, and he was definitely thinking about it all day. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I was like, mate, they're way tougher than you think, like way tougher. So I wouldn't worry about it. Like, there's nowhere near
himself already.
Yeah, like there was nowhere near enough arrow. Like you could actually see it when it turned around and ran. Like you could actually see like a whole arrow like hanging out. So I was like, that deer's perfectly fine. Like it didn't go anywhere. So. So after that, like we've headed further up the ridge, and he's like, "Oh, like it's your go," and like a bit of a calamity of errors on this day actually. Got up there, and I was like, "Oh yeah, cool." Like we could see this young buck, and he was probably at around 40 to 50 yards, and I was like, "All right, let's get down here." And I was like, "Get your camera out because this could be cool." So I put in a couple of doe calls. Called this deer right in. He stopped at about 15 or 20 yards. And I was like, okay, I'll have a shot because I need some meat for the freezer anyway. So I drew back. Didn't realise that there was actually a star picket dead in line with his front leg, man. So I'm like, yeah, this deer's smoked. Took the shot and just bang, sent this broadhead about halfway down my brand new arrow shaft. I was like, that deer just had the luckiest day of its life. Like,
how far was the shot?
Oh, like 15 to 20 yards, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. I just realised I've got Facebook open. I'm going to quickly shut that off before it makes a lot of noise. Perfect. All right, cool. And so, do you have bad eyes? You just not see it?
Sorry?
Do you have bad eyesight, or did you just not see the star picket?
Oh, no, like I had like this chocolate deer standing.
Okay, yeah, makes a bit more sense. You press mute for a second. There you go.
Sorry, mate. That was actually the taxidermist trying to ring me.
Oh, gotcha. So sorry, you it was chocolate. You didn't. Yeah, I didn't understand that part. I was like,
yeah, he was like a chocolate deer, and then I couldn't actually see like the star picket in amongst the bushes of like an old fence line. Like it was the most unluckiest thing. Like you couldn't have hit that star picket if you tried like all day.
Hilarious. That's unfortunate. Yeah. Okay, so what happened from there?
Yeah, so after that, like, we had a little bit of action, a couple of small stalks, and I was, like, really trying to just, coax some deer to come into him sort of thing, which was kind of non-eventful, to be honest. So after a while, we packed up, we've gone home, had a rest, had a bit of a breather, and then the next day we've gone out to a different block. So I was like, all right, like, this is our last day of hunting. Let's go as hard as we can because I really want to like try and get you down your first deer. This is his first deer ever, mind you, and he's doing it with a bow. So it's it's a tough task, but like fucking awesome at the same time. And we've turned up at this block. There's some low lingering fog, which for me is I love that weather, especially when there's fog because they're going to be out. They're going to be pretty visible. They're going to hang around for a long time, and normally they're really, really vocal. But we got there, and there was not a peep, and I mean not a single sound. I let out a couple of calls, absolutely got nothing back. So we're like, oh, okay, well let's go down to this little gully in here where there's a few pine trees and whatever, and we'll have a suss around and see if we can see any activity of some deer and whatnot. So we got in there. We actually bumped a really good buck out of there, actually. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, let's get right up on the next ridge because we're going to have a thermal problem here soon. As the sun was starting to come up, obviously the thermals are going to rise. So I was like, let's get above it. And if anything starts making some noise, then we can just come down on top of them kind of thing. So we did all that. Then we've eventually got into some really good area where we were starting to see a scrape, say like every 50 to 100 meters or so, just scattered around. Mm-hmm. So for me, I was like, yeah, like we're getting really close to these deer now. So this should be sick. And then we started heading back down the hill after a bit of a debate about which direction we should go because everything was a little bit quiet. And we started walking down one sort of spine on this ridge line, and I just heard this little croak, and I was like, oh, he might be, 300 to 500 meters away. And then he must have actually turned around and started croaking in our direction. I was like, that deer is way fucking closer. So yeah, we got down into there, and there was this guy, and he was just smashing up his scrapes and having a grand old time there by himself. Obviously, all the does were just bedded up on the ridgeline behind him, and Mike's put in a really good stalk there after a bit of we discussed whether or not I tried a call, but I actually thought I might have been a little bit too close because we were at about 60, 70 yards at this point.
So what do you mean? Why do you dictate that? What makes you say that you were too close to make a call?
Oh, because they know what a deer sounds like, and they know. Yeah, it's really hard. It's very, very close. It's close enough for him to be able to just stand there and look across and be like, "Oh, there's nothing there. That's weird."
Yeah. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I think it's like this is the shoe off moment, like fucking take your boots off, and I reckon get down, just stay in the shadows, slide down this little hill here, and try and get in amongst those trees down there. And that was unreal. And I actually forgot to turn the GoPro on for a lot of that. But he got into about 35 yards, I think, and then this bloody doe has come through just 100 miles an hour, ran past him, and he's taken off after it like a bull at the gate. Like, he was gone. I was like, fucking damn it, man. Like, that would, like, it was a good moment. Like, and it was a good deer too. Like, it was a pretty good deer. So, yeah. After that, obviously, we've heard a few more croaking down in the gully, and by this time, it was probably nearly 10 o'clock, and everything was starting to fire up. Like, normally it's like first light is when you get the most action, but it was getting more and more and more as the day was starting to wear on, surprisingly.
That's interesting.
Like, I was super shocked. So, so we've come down, and this is when we got to what I can only describe as that lek sort of thing. And getting in there, and I'm giving out a couple of little calls just to, like, fire them right up, and you can get them moving a little bit because they're in amongst trees. Like, they can be hard to see. So get them moving a little bit, and then we can move as well. Like, once they're making a shitload of racket, like, we can push in further. So we did that for, oh God, it was probably 40 minutes, I suppose. And Mike's come to full draw on one. It's a pretty long way, so it's about 40 yards. And then he's taken his shot, and all I heard was like this, and I was like, oh no. So, like, he's obviously like hit a branch or something like that in the top of the collection. And I was like, poor bastard. Like, I'm thinking, no. So there's, like, obviously a little bit of frustration where you're just like, fuck. Like, these are, like, so many opportunities right now. And the poor guy, like, you feel so bad for him that he's put in this much effort and for something like that to happen. And then he's like, oh, did you have a shot? And I was like, nah, man, like, this is your hunt, dude. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I think maybe we should, like, just split up for 10 minutes, and you can have a bit of a hunt, and I'll go and chase this one that's croaking over here. And I was like, yeah, man, like, go get that thing. Like, it's making noise. Like, go get it. And we'll meet back on top of the ridge at like 2:30. So obviously everything's scattered out of that lek, and all these errors that have been happening over the last 2 days must have just been like an absolute blessing. All the deer's just scattered off. So I've started walking down towards the next sort of gully section, like over a small ridge and then down into that gully, and I could hear another buck croaking. And I think because all the deer scattered in different directions, that he was down there actually, like, croaking to say, hey, like, I'm here, girls, come back.
Yeah.
So he wasn't actually going anywhere. He was just, like, running around, like, in this circle that was probably about 40 or 50 meters, just croaking and croaking and croaking. Then he'd stand there and he'd look around to try and see if his girls were coming back. And I was like, oh. Got me now?
Yeah. Busy man.
Yeah, sorry. Another fucking phone call. So, I was like, this is a blessing in disguise. So I got down there, and there was only like 2 spikers and maybe 1 doe off to my left. And they were probably, 30 or 40 meters away. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And he's down in sort of like an open patch. So I was like, well, I've got a bit of a shadow line here. So I just followed the tree edge in amongst the shadows. Eventually got down, and I was starting to get a little bit worried because deer was starting to come back in towards him, like filtering back down to see what all the commotion was about. And now I wouldn't recommend this to fucking anyone because, like, it's probably not a good idea. But I decided at the time that 45 to 50 yards was going to be how I was going to shoot this deer. Because he was so far out in the open and I was starting to run out of tree line, I just thought, right, there's other deer coming in. He's literally standing there just quartering away, just doing absolutely nothing except croaking occasionally and then going back to looking around. I was like, it couldn't get any better. So I drew back and, I just settled the pin down and took a relaxed breath and then, sent that arrow flying and within like half a second, it had gone straight through in the last couple of ribs in behind there and popped out the front shoulder. So,
good.
He ran off and just fell over onto his side and I couldn't believe my luck, to be honest.
And he's a big boy too. He's a decent fella,
he's
right?
Proper. Yeah, he's a proper one, yep.
It's interesting that you said that you wouldn't recommend that because obviously it's a shot that you're comfortable with. And I think it's dictated by, obviously the situation was he was unaware that you were there.
That's right.
And it's a shot that you're comfortable doing. So within saying that, there's nothing wrong with doing that, right? Like,
no,
I understand what you're saying is like, hey, we do better when we're closer, right? Like as a bow hunter, we remove a lot of chances by getting closer.
Yeah, I have like a bit of an opinion on distance. So, like obviously 99% of the animals that I've shot have been like probably under 10 or 15 yards, but the rest of them have usually been over 35. I always find between like that, because even 25 yards in the bush is a bloody long way. But I always find that if you're in that sort of 35 to 20 yard range, they can hear you like really well. They seem to jump the string a lot, and any sort of movement they're going to pick up with their eyes. Like it's almost like I find it like the danger distance, 35 to 20, like 20 to 35 yards. Yeah. Outside of that, they don't hear anything, and if they're distracted or heads down feeding or like this guy was doing, just croaking and looking around, it's a stationary target. And, I spent a lot of years shooting actual target at 50 metres. So a 45 to 50 yard shot isn't too bad. It is very risky. Like obviously
45 metres, what's that? That's roughly, 45 yards. That's roughly
41 metres.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I think in that, like, my opinion of that is that if you are a confident shooter, like you're taking a shot at a distance that you're confident with, something that you've done a lot of shooting at, and the animal is unaware, I don't see that as being a bad play.
No, it's definitely situational.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously if you've never taken shots at 40 metres before and you're going out in the bush and that's the first time you try and take a shot at 40 metres, you're a dickhead. It's not the way that you should go about it. But if you as an individual have shot plenty at 40 metres, you shot plenty at 50 metres, you shot plenty at 60 metres, and a deer is there at 50 metres and you're confident in that shot and they're completely unaware of you and it's like that situation completely for you, if you could have got close, you probably would have. But given the circumstances, it just wasn't going to happen. So it was a now or never situation. And I think I say this and I kind of belabor it a little bit because I've been on the other end of it where I go, I should have. I wish I had done this. I should have done this. I should have just taken that shot. Like I was confident at that 30-metre shot, but I still tried to get to 20 metres, and that's what ruined. That's where the wind came in and ruined it for me. If I'd taken that 30-metre shot, I'd have a deer down, but it just didn't happen. And so I think it is obviously situational, and it really comes down to that in that moment, what you feel confident and happy to do.
Yeah, I think it's definitely sort of like, I'm not the most experienced bow hunter out there, but I've been doing it long enough now that like eventually you sort of, when to move fast, when to move slow, and you sort of know when to shoot a deer and when not to shoot a deer as well. Yeah. Obviously mistakes still happen. Like I've lost a few deer in my time, but like you become situational aware as to be like, oh yeah, like this is on or it's just completely not. So, and being the last day as well, and I was very, very confident, and he was an absolute belter. Like, you don't come across those deer in the bush very often. Like, unless they're in a paddock somewhere, like, you generally don't find them.
So what happened to the rest of the mob that was coming down towards you? They take off, or were they pretty unaware?
Yeah, they took off. Yeah, they took off, and then when he's fallen over, they actually came back up to like have a look at him, and then when they realised that he was just like on his side on the ground, like then they've just taken off, and yeah, I just had to have a little moment and a couple of cigarettes and a bit of a relax, and then walked up to him and absolutely shit myself because he didn't get any smaller when he got on the ground.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I've seen it. I've seen the photos. So what's going on with Mike this whole time whilst you're off taking your quick 10-minute steps?
He was off like trying to find that other buck that was on that scrape earlier. Unfortunately, it didn't eventuate for him, and he had places to be at about 2:30 that afternoon. So, unfortunately, poor guy. Like, I feel so bad that he didn't end up getting his first deer, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get another shot at it, and we'll definitely get him for sure. So
you're out in the middle of the bush. You've got a deer down. What's your process? How do you go about butchering up? Do you gut it on the spot? Do you chuck it straight in the ute? Like, what's your go-to?
Gutless method. Yeah, I'm a bit of a girl when it comes to that, man. I don't want to stick my hand in there.
Are you what? So you're leaving a bit behind, or?
Sorry?
You're taking just legs and backstrap?
Yeah, legs and backstrap and cape. Like, it's super heavy, so... And, I only had my fishing bag. I didn't actually pack my backpack, so it was like the worst fucking idea ever. You should have seen me, like, after doing like 10 to 15 Ks that morning, I suppose, and then and it was steep country too. So like, I'm here like sucking down a cigarette, just like head over my shoulder and shit hanging off me, and bloody meat jammed in the bag, and just trying to drag my ass out of there, but. The first thing I do is I start caping, and then the first thing I'll take out is the back straps, and then obviously you'll work the rest of the cape off once you take the front hocks off. So
this is obviously a deer that you have sent to the taxidermist as one that you're going to get mounted.
Yep.
And so do you leave extra cape for fuck ups or anything like that?
Yeah. So normally, like, if you can imagine where your rib cage ends and then down towards your belly button.
Yeah.
Usually, like, I'll take it down to the belly somewhere in that line, like halfway between your rib cage and your belly button.
Yeah.
So it's a fair way back on the deer, obviously. But yeah, it's better to give them more than less.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And you're just doing it on the ground, right? Like, you're not hanging him in any form or anything like that?
Yeah, no. I wish I could have hung him up, but yeah, unfortunately it was on the ground, so yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a lot harder. I've seen some different pulley systems recently that actually could work pretty well for it. But it's just about trying to make it happen, right? Like, and sometimes it's about carrying a buckle that's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 kilos in your pack. Is it all that worthwhile or not? I'm not really sure. But at the same time, a hanging deer is a lot easier to skin and gut and butcher up completely compared to one on the ground. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I always find when I leave something behind, like my backpack on this day. So that's when you shoot the one that you want.
And you get something. All right, I'm leaving deer behind from now on.
Yeah. It's like I shot that buck in 2019, like a couple of months after we did our first podcast. And I'd stalked that guy for like 4 months. And then when I'd shot him, like, I realised that I'd left my fucking knife at home.
Yeah.
So I shot this thing, dragged it into the shade, and then I've had to hike an hour out of there to go and get a knife and then hike all the way back in. Jesus. So, yeah.
And so this is, at the moment, it's the 14th of April. So we're coming to, really, the rut's still pretty much in full swing, but we're coming to the back end of it by the time I actually edit this up and get it out. What's kind of your game plan for the rest of the rut? What do you do from here on out, given that I think I don't know. I don't know how it is for you, but we've just hit our cool front. Like it only just came pretty much this week.
Yep.
So I think that's going to keep things alive for a little bit longer, at least up here in the Brisbane Valley where I am. So I think we've pretty much got another 15 days at least of good quality rut. That's my opinion. I'm not definite on how that will go, but I'd say at least until pretty much the end of April, we've got a pretty good season ahead of us.
Yeah, well, hopefully you do. Like, obviously, like the Reds go for a lot longer than the Fallow do.
Mm-hmm.
But being the 14th now, like, there'll be a lot of guys hunting this weekend. Obviously, being Easter long weekend.
Yeah. And then the next weekend being the Anzac Day long weekend. It's like.
Yeah. So normally, like I have seen Fallow going really, really hard around that like 16th, 17th, 18th, but normally by the 20th, things are well wrapped up. But being the fourth, yeah.
So you reckon for the Fallow? No, that's right with the plane. It was fine. Yeah. So with the Fallow, then you reckon you've pretty much got 6 days left.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll be spending that time chasing Samba for the first time. So
yeah.
My rut's pretty much over. Like, I definitely don't need to shoot another one this year.
No, but more so meaning for anyone who's getting out for these last few chunks of days or whatever it is, handful of days. Would you change anything? Would you say to do anything different compared to what we've kind of just really talked about?
No, as it gets later towards that sort of 16th, 17th, like come your sort of Monday, Tuesday, I would probably actually start to rattle a bit more.
Okay.
Yes, because like you'll be getting those like desperate ones right on the end, thinking, oh, it's coming to an end, and they should hope, like if you're lucky enough, you should get a pretty aggressive one. I've had a lot of luck actually calling deer in around that 16th, 17th. So you'd
find a scrape, rattle your ass off, and then see what happens.
Oh shit, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't actually find the deer first, I would have a blind rattle over a good scrape. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. So tell us about the Samba hunt. What's the deal there?
Well, I've never done it before, so I've got absolutely no fucking clue. So
are you going blind? You're in there by yourself, or you've got someone taking you along?
No, so as a bit of a favour back, because obviously Sammy was the guy who I went out with first and caught some deer for and stuff like that. Yeah, he's taken me down to his Samba spot down south as a bit of a thank you for helping him out with the fallows. So
how far south do you have to travel?
Like 7 hours, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it public lands? Is it private land?
Yeah, it's public land. Yeah, it's public.
And so it's obviously a place where he's pulled deer from before.
Yeah, he's pulled a few stags out of there, and he's got a lot of cameras there as well to collect as well. So it'll be interesting to see if anything showed up down there. But yeah, he's seen quite a few wallows and stuff like that. But obviously, with all the aerial culls and stuff like that lately, hopefully we'll have a little bit of luck and we might see something. You know, like being my first ever Samba, I reckon if it's brown, it's going down.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, fair enough. Has that region in particular been hit by the aerial culls?
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
Okay. And so, are you taking bow only?
Yeah, I'm taking the bow.
Is he taking his bow as well, or is he going to take a rifle as well?
Yeah, he's taking his bow, but I think he's also taking a rifle. So, you know, like come the last day, if we're going to leave on Monday or something like that, and to make the diesel a bit more cost effective, then we'll take some meat home. So.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We were having this conversation the other day with the boys I went out with. One of them, his neighbour, has been going to the same butcher for years, and he used to spend $200 each time he went there. And his most recent bill was $650 for the same order that he used to always get. And he's like, okay, I need to figure something out. Like, if this is actually because he's offered to take him out hunting with him. He's like, if this is actually an honest offer, what I will do is I'll go and do it all seriously. I'll go and get my gun license. I'll go and do everything so I can start to provide for the family off the land. He's like, how much meat do you get off of a red deer, for instance? And he told him, oh yeah, like 30 to 50 kilos, depending on the size of the deer. And he was just blown away. He's like, oh my God, like I'm doing this. And so he's all of a sudden going out, he's looking at like $2,500 rifles and stuff and more.
when you're paying like $15 for 2 chicken breasts that are just fed corn, you're like,
exactly
what the
right.
fuck?
Exactly right. So it makes a lot of sense, especially with the cost of diesel right now. Why would you not?
Absolutely.
And so what have you been doing in preparation for the Samba then? Is there anything that you've kind of, any videos you've kind of looked up, any people you've been calling on?
Nah, absolutely. Like, literally, I know absolutely nothing about Samba deer. Like, I've always wanted to go hunt them, especially for probably the last 3 years. But obviously, with all the BS that's going on in the world, which we won't mention because that'll like kill your podcast.
Send you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. But yeah, I've wanted to hunt them for a few years now, but just haven't had the opportunity. But I reckon, yeah, I'll just get down there and just watch and learn if I can come across a couple. So
yeah,
I'm always found that the best way. Like, yeah, you can watch as much TV as you like and stuff like that, but it never beats actually seeing them in the flesh and seeing what they do. So
definitely not.
I'll give that a crack and see what happens. Hopefully, I can get lucky.
There's only so much you can learn from other people's mistakes, right?
Yeah, that's right. You're going to go and fuck up yourself.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I mean, pretty much all I know of Samba is how sneaky they are, so how stealthy you have to be as well.
Yeah, and I'm not the stealthiest dude. Like, you can imagine like a 105-kilo dude just stumbling around in the bush.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, that is a question I had for you. When you were, for instance, stalking up on your fellow that you just got on the weekend, what was your approach? Like, do you get low? Do you body crawl, or you pretty much, because you're in the shadows, you're able to use that as a
So the main tip I would ever give anyone is, like, obviously keep cover behind you as best you can. If you can have cover in front, like, that's unreal, but a lot of the times that doesn't always happen. Keep that stuff behind you. Try and stay in the shadows if you can, and especially if you're not wearing a buff over your face, always keep your bow up, like upright in front of your face when you're doing your stalk. It also means that when you go to draw back, you're not moving as much. Mm-hmm. You know, like, you're all still in that dead straight line. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they're the biggest tips I would give to anyone.
Yeah, actually, my biggest regret from last year's rut was not drawing back on a deer that was walking straight at me, and because he was, and we had conversations afterwards, and you're like, bro, they're always so distracted. Like, they're more distracted than what you think at this point of time. Like, you can literally pull back as soon as you see them, pull back, pretty much. Like,
yeah, and especially while they're walking. Yeah, like, you always draw while they're walking, because they're not really focused on looking at you because they don't know you're there yet. So.
No, and he was walking. He was like literally swaying his head side to side. He was tired. You could see how fatigued he was. He was just walking. Yeah. He was looking at me, like, in my general direction, but he didn't give a fuck. Like, literally, I just watched him walk straight by me at 10 meters. I'm like, why the heck did you not draw back? So that opportunity.
Like, it's walking in on your lap, and you're like, oh, just distracted by the deer.
Yeah, exactly. I was more so the fact I'm like, he's going to run if I pull back, but yeah. So that situation is never slipping by me again. That's for sure.
Yeah, nah. Always take the chance to draw back. Like, you can't get a shot off if you don't have the arrow back. So
yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm getting out from 22nd to the 25th for a bit more of a proper hunt, which will be good. Yeah, hoping that the boys are still pretty vocal. My block is generally pretty good for delivering good quality guys, but there's also a lot of youngies that get around. So I'm super intrigued to kind of see what it's like this time around, and pretty much what was that?
Well, you still got shitloads of time. Like, in reality, if you think about it, like, even if the rut has come to an end, like, they're going to be starving, man. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be out, like, heads down in the grass. Like, that's an awesome opportunity as well to get some good stalks in. So
yeah, definitely. The only problem is right now there is that much grass about. Like, it is. Yeah. I was talking to the farmer last night or night before, and they were saying it's literally like 6 to 8 foot of grass in the creeks and stuff like that.
Oh, demon.
Yeah, which is insane. So obviously I'm going to have to find my positions and set it up right. And it's not like that everywhere, but that is definitely going to dictate where I hunt a lot more. So it'll be interesting. But there's lots of feed about, so they don't have to travel far. So I'll be going straight to the places I know they hang out, and yeah, that'll be my game plan. How much do you sit still during the rut?
Fuck. You don't even want to live with me, man, when the rut's on, dude. Like, I'll be walking around, even though, like, I know that I'm going out the next day, man. I'll be walking around in my house going, fuck, these things are going off. They're croaking right now, and I'm not out there. Like, no, I don't sit still, dude.
So, I mean, once you're actually on the mountain, you won't sit still at all?
Yeah. Like, I will, like, obviously to glass and have a look around and have a listen, but if something's making noise or if I know something's there, like, I'm going to move on it. Because obviously, like, we're all time poor, so, and sometimes you get limited opportunities even during the rut. So, yeah, I'll get in there to where the deer are for sure. Definitely at that point in time, because yeah,
it's interesting. The reason I asked that is because I've pretty much got 3 ridges that they hang out on mainly. There's kind of one main one where I've always hunted. Then across from it, there's a major mountain. And then off of that mountain, pretty much there's a full ridge that goes down the length of the property. And this one main ridge where they kind of always are, last year when I pretty much just stopped moving around a bit, that's when I had the guy walk literally straight at me. And I was like, heck, well, I know they're on that ridge. Is it worthwhile just sitting still for half a day?
Yeah, like, and that's what I was saying to you earlier about, like, knowing when to move fast and knowing when to move slow. It's like, if you know where they're going to be, or if you've glassed them up earlier that morning, you know, you're going to move pretty quick to get to that area. Obviously not fast enough to maybe spook something that you didn't realise was right in front of you, but you're going to get right in there and then you're going to slow right down, obviously. Yeah. And then try and come up with some sort of game plan.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm excited. I've got a good feeling about this year. I think I say that every year, but I do.
Oh, man, it's going to come off for sure.
Yeah.
I'll be, like, you're just going to knock, like, this giant cracker. Like, it's just going to be unreal.
Hopefully. I've definitely seen some there, so it's bound to happen one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been putting in the hard work, man. Like, it's going to come off.
Yeah, it's been interesting this last few months in particular. Like not since obviously not really 2022, so I haven't really hunted much. But kind of that last 6 months of 21, I got out quite a lot, and it really filled me with a lot of confidence, to be honest. Just getting out more and getting amongst the animals that much, and I think going out and hunting without the ability to actually shoot some things, like having some restrictions around on the deer management service system that I was on, it actually made it. It was a different approach because you're there to watch the deer rather. Like as soon as you know you can't shoot that deer, it's like, okay, well, I'll just sit and watch it and actually really take in what it's going to do and how it's going to react. And it kind of just gave me a bit of a different outlook on the deer in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we spoke about this in our first podcast, where I was like, you know, like just you don't have to shoot them, obviously, but like sitting down and just watching and learning actually in front of that deer is going to give you like more experience for the future when you actually are trying to hunt one. Yeah, like it's invaluable.
Yeah, definitely.
You can watch as many Nat Geo docos as you like, but like it's just not the same, you know.
I think after talking to Harry Watson last year as well, his kind of thing is always getting as close as possible, like literally trying to get within meters of them. And so I kind of made that a bit of a challenge then. So it's like if I ever came across a deer that I wasn't able to shoot, I was like, well, I'm going to see how close I can actually get to it. And
fucking absolutely. Like try and get in there so you can like near touch that thing.
Yeah, and like being 5 meters off of a deer and just literally sitting there watching it and has no idea you're there is a phenomenal thing. Like it's absolutely unreal. So yeah, that's kind of I don't know. It's just opened my eyes a lot. It's been good. It's been good fun. Actually, I meant to mention before. It was very, the story you were telling is exactly when Mike was chasing that deer. It was up on the stag and then the hind or the doe ran through and then took him off. There's actually a tip that I got given a while ago was if you can get close enough to where the girls are, follow the trails of where the girls go because they leave a scent for them for the boys to try to chase. So obviously you don't want to be right on the actual trail, but if you see a girl run off, try to get close to that situation if you can because the boy's going to be traveling soon after.
Yeah, and you'll tend to see all their scrapes on like the intersections of where the does travel between bed and feed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's definitely where they'll set up their scrapes. So like you might have like a bit of a gully or something like that. Most of the time the deer want to be up high, like especially the bucks and stuff. Reds are probably similar. But wherever there's a place where there's like doe bedding or where there's like their game trail from there to feed and stuff like that, there'll always be scrapes there 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. How territorial are they of their scrapes?
They can be pretty territorial, especially if they got girls there, like with them. Yeah, they'll be pretty protective of their area. Like if a young buck comes in, like they'll nail it. So.
What's your outlook? And obviously it changes, and it's pretty interesting hearing the outlook on the Samba, right? If it's Browns down, I'm all for that. In the situation of fallow for you, is it pretty much you only shoot older deer now? Like you're always trying to essentially beat your PB?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I know it sounds silly, but like there comes a point where you're at, say, like 20 yards from a deer and you're like, oh, fuck, if I shoot this thing, then I've got to carry it.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I think you were talking to your American mate there at some point and, you were saying about mule deer and, like, the further away you get from your car, like, the higher your standards get. It definitely gets like that. Yeah, absolutely. With a first of species, though, you kind of, like, you're not as picky, but, like, I'd love to go down there and shoot a Samba stag. And if I can, I'll definitely work my ass off to try and make that happen. But, yeah, I do need meat at the same time. But, yeah, with fallow, like I've been in front of quite a few of them now, and yeah, unless it's decent or if it really needs to like disappear, then I'll generally just play around, see how close I can get them to come to me, and then I'll turn around and go away, you silly bugger.
What's it's good because it provides some practice as well. In your opinion, which is the best tasting deer?
The best tasting?
Yeah.
Red.
Reds?
100% deer, man. Yeah, 100%. By a country mile.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. And I think it's because whoever I've always had fallow from, they've always presented with the back straps, but it's always been incredibly nice.
So I've eaten chittle, rooster deer. Well, I've eaten every species except for hog deer.
Okay.
And yeah, if I had my pick of them, it would I'd take a red any day of the week. Yeah.
I've found a newfound love for the reds and for the meat, and I've played around with their meat a lot recently, and tried a lot of different things. And I'm actually trying my first silver side, like properly. I've corned it up, I've brined it.
Nice.
So I'm super intrigued. It literally put it in the slow cook just before we started talking. So I'm intrigued to see how it actually turns out. But it's my first time not my first time, but it's like I'm actually starting to really utilize the cuts for what they are.
You can post some of that for me.
I'm sure it might be moldy by that stage.
Fucking Australia posts take forever, don't they?
I was talking to a vegetarian yesterday, and because it's Black Friday, I said, "Oh yeah, I've just been brining up this silver side for Black Friday." He's like, "Oh, does that make it seafood? Does it?" I said, "No, mate. You can't change a land-based animal into seafood just by salting it." But yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's a classic.
It's obviously because I had referenced Black Friday, so he's like, "Hold up, what?" But yeah, I thought that was gold. Anyway, dude, we are on a time crunch, so I'm going to say that was a good, quick little episode, definitely. It's cool to kind of get your insights and what's worked well for you this year, and wishing you all the luck for the upcoming Samba hunt, man. I think I'm stoked for you.
Thanks, man. And, sorry about the aeroplane and the bloody
That's all right.
phone calls going galore.
Busy man, that's fine. What's your Instagram handles again?
Beyond Beard Life. So beyond_Beard Life.
Yeah. And you can see Matt's incredible buck that he's just got down. Got some good pictures up. Actually, let's talk about setup before we bail out real quick. What is your setup? What were you shooting this year? Because I think you've made some changes. Oh, you've made changes over the last few years, but to your actual broadheads and setup in general.
Yeah, so I've got 2 elite tempos, both exactly the same, 70 pound. A lot of deer I've shot with mechanical broadheads. But last year I was up there with Kevin Schilf and Ian Summers, and Summers gave me a couple of Cayugas to try out, and
Pilot
put
cuts
those on there. Didn't have to mess with my tune whatsoever. After sending these down to a target.
Was it the pilot cuts or was it the Zots?
Yeah, the pilot cuts. Yeah. So I don't think the Zots were out yet. So he just had a couple of trial packets, I think, at that point in time, and didn't have any with him. But yeah, I put some pilot cuts on there, and yeah, they just zipped down range like an absolute dart. And I was like, yeah, okay. And ended up shooting a red while I was up there with one of those, and absolutely destroyed it. So
did you use bleeder blade?
Sorry,
did you use the bleeder blade?
I did while I was up there. This time around, I actually left the bleeders out.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's how I'm rolling this year, without the bleeders.
Yeah, I just ran it as the original sort of 2-blade. So
yeah,
obviously, done a treat this year. So I'll stick with those. But
it's super interesting. How have you found sharpening them?
Oh, I haven't had to sharpen it yet. I don't shoot enough.
I messed around with them quite a lot and had to sharpen them. And I just couldn't get them punching hairs. And so what I did was one of the guys I went out with on Friday, he owns a Mr. Minute, and he actually does mobile servicing as well. So I said, mate, bring your mobile kit along. We'll sharpen up my broadheads. He literally, because I'd done most of the work, he just had to touch them like zit, 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 on this belt sander that he's got, and they are incredible now. Like how sharp they are. So I'm excited.
Right.
I'm excited to get out and make it happen. But it made me think that if anyone needs broadhead sharpening, maybe get along to your local Mr. Minute and ask what they can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah, but with arrows and stuff like that, I just shoot a standard shaft, sort of standard size shaft, diameter shaft, and usually anywhere between that 470 to 490 sort of grains I find the best.
Yeah.
Before you start to get sort of diminishing returns on speed and all the rest of it.
Is that total weight or that's?
Yeah, total weight. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's actually pretty light, really, right? Like it's a pretty light arrow. It's on the lighter end, or medium, really. Yeah,
well, you'd think so. Like I've shot right up to 550 grains before, but I don't know the physics of it, but obviously there becomes a point where you obviously lose too much speed, where obviously the weight is useless anyway. So it was kind of the middle ground where I get good speed, awesome penetration, and it still has a good velocity and impact to it. So
did you
that's where I found the middle ground. So
do you get complete pass through on animals typically, or what's it look like?
Yeah.
I think really
almost time.
Like the equipment that we've got access to now, unless you're a small individual that's not shooting a high poundage, like if you're not getting some form of almost complete pass through, obviously depending on the shot, but I don't think that the setup is quite good enough if you're not getting that, right? I don't know if that's maybe the best way to look at it, but I see shots on whitetail deer, for instance, over in the States, just on video footage, and arrows that go what looks like half the way through the animal, and you're like, fuck, that's not good. Like if you're looking to do maximum damage, you want complete pass through where possible.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's people talk about you need a 600-700 grain arrow and all this sort of piss. Well, that's not going to help you if your draw inch is 26 inches long and you're shooting a 40-pound bow. You're better off having a 420 grain arrow. Let's just say let's just say you're a girl, for example, or something like that, and you're shooting a 55, 60-pound bow, you know, you're going to do a lot more damage with like a 430 or a 450 grain arrow than you ever would with a 600 grain arrow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And it's obviously, there's a whole science behind it. It's always interesting to hear the debates on it.
Yeah.
Geez, some people get worked up.
Yeah, I just think, if you hit them in the middle of the front bit, like, they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's doing the part.
Yeah.
All right, Matty White, everybody, thank you very much, dude. It's been good.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll have to catch up again later.
Done deal. That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bowhunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you're enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.